This is The World is Like This, and today I'm here to show you 3 proofs that the world is getting worse and worse. I hope you like the video, and if you like it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you can reach more and more good people. Let's go. 1. Conflicts and geopolitics. The war between Israel and the Hamas group, which controls the Gaza Strip, represents one of the most intense conflicts in the region in recent decades. The current escalation has reignited latent tensions, provoking violent clashes and bombings, which have seriously impacted the civilian population. Hospitals and basic infrastructure have been severely affected, worsening the humanitarian crisis and hampering access to essential supplies such as water and electricity. The international community has expressed growing concern about the human impact of the conflict and the possible geopolitical repercussions. Organizations such as the UN and several nations have called for an immediate ceasefire to prevent the escalation of violence and reduce civilian suffering. However, diplomatic efforts face obstacles, given the history of mutual distrust and the political complexities involved. In addition to the humanitarian impact, the conflict also has implications for regional and global security. Instability could attract other international actors, further complicating power dynamics in the Middle East. Nearby nations are watching the situation cautiously, as governments around the world evaluate measures to promote stability and contain the cycle of violence. 2. Global economy and inflation. The global economy faces ongoing challenges with inflation, which has impacted both developed and emerging economies. Although some countries have recorded a slowdown in the inflation rate, the relief is uneven across sectors. Food and fuel prices, for example, remain high, putting pressure on family budgets and increasing the cost of living. In more vulnerable regions, this increase threatens food security and increases poverty rates. Central banks around the world continue to adopt restrictive monetary policies to contain inflation, such as raising interest rates. However, these measures have side effects, such as slowing economic growth and increasing the cost of credit for companies and consumers. Additionally, factors such as supply chain shocks and geopolitical tensions complicate economic recovery and make price control more difficult. The persistence of inflation in essential items such as food and energy reflects structural imbalances and a global dependence on limited resources. Meanwhile, governments and international organizations are seeking coordinated solutions to mitigate economic and social impacts, such as incentives for the energy transition and investments in sustainable infrastructure. However, finding the balance between growth and stability remains a complex challenge for global leaders. 3. Mental health and society. Mental health has become a central concern in contemporary societies, reflecting a scenario where the increase in diagnoses of anxiety, depression, and exhaustion is associated with social and economic factors. Fast-paced life, pressure for productivity, and financial difficulties create a stressful environment that affects people's quality of life. In many regions, the stigma surrounding mental illnesses still prevents individuals from seeking adequate help, worsening the problem. Social inequality is another relevant factor that impacts mental health in different ways. Low-income people face more barriers to accessing psychological and psychiatric services, in addition to being more vulnerable to adverse conditions such as unemployment and housing insecurity. At the same time, even those in better financial conditions are not immune to mental suffering, often living under pressure for results and recognition. The role of social media and technology in mental health is ambiguous. On the one hand, they create spaces for support and exchange of experiences. But, on the other, they intensify comparisons, isolation, and the feeling of inadequacy. The constant consumption of negative information can also contribute to a continuous state of alert, increasing anxiety levels. Children and adolescents are particularly exposed to these impacts, developing emotional problems from an early age. Another important aspect is the culture of exhausting work and the lack of balance between personal and professional life. Many people feel overwhelmed by unattainable goals and long journeys, without adequate time for rest and leisure. This leads to emotional exhaustion, the famous burnout, which has become increasingly common, especially in sectors with high demand, such as education, health, and technology. To face these challenges, it is essential that public policies advance in promoting mental well-being and expanding access to care. This includes the implementation of prevention programs in schools and companies, in addition to the creation of more accessible psychological care networks. Investing in the training of health professionals and combating stigma are essential steps towards transforming the way society views mental illnesses. Finally, it is necessary to question the social values that promote excessive competitiveness and the constant search for success, which end up weakening human relationships and self-care. Promoting a more just and compassionate society is not just a matter of individual mental health, but a collective need. The path to a healthier future involves rethinking priorities and creating an environment where everyone can thrive emotionally. Bonus: climate crisis. Climate crises are intensifying and affecting all regions of the planet, with increasingly visible impacts such as extreme heat waves, forest fires, floods, and prolonged droughts. The increasing frequency and severity of these natural events has devastating consequences for biodiversity and human life, putting food security, public health, and the economic stability of several nations at risk. Global warming, driven by excessive greenhouse gas emissions, is one of the main reasons for this situation. Sectors such as industry, transport, and agriculture contribute significantly to the release of CO2 into the atmosphere. Meanwhile, the slow transition to renewable energy sources and large-scale deforestation worsen the situation, reducing the ability of ecosystems to absorb carbon. In addition to the environmental impact, the climate crisis is also a social crisis. Vulnerable communities, especially in the poorest regions, are those that suffer most from natural disasters, forced displacement, and lack of essential resources. Millions of people have already become climate refugees, forced to abandon their homes due to environmental degradation. Global inequality is accentuated, as nations least responsible for emissions end up being the most harmed. Global efforts to tackle the climate crisis still face major challenges. Despite international agreements, such as the Paris Agreement, many countries have difficulty meeting their emission reduction targets due to economic and political interests. The pressure for rapid economic growth often overrides environmental urgency, and funding for sustainable solutions is still insufficient. Mitigating climate crises requires a profound and integrated transformation of public policies, the economy, and consumption habits. The transition to a green economy, encouraging renewable energy, and protecting forests are essential steps. Furthermore, it is crucial to increase public awareness and promote environmental responsibility in all sectors of society. Only with a joint effort will it be possible to contain the most serious impacts and guarantee a livable future for future generations. Good video ends here. I hope you liked it, and if you like it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to help us, and also leave a comment, giving your opinion. That's it.